Good evening. This is the planning board meeting of January 21st. It was a pleasure of the board with the minutes.
Motion to approve. Second?
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the meeting. All those in favor, hearing any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4 in favor, 1 abstention. We're going to jump out of order and take the amended site plan review for 161 East Main Street first.
This is amended site plan, 161 East Main. They're requesting approval for the proposed change of use in a portion of the building on the subject property. Specifically, the proposal is to change the previous Dollar General retail use to a church. The proposed church is to occupy 9,940 square feet of the building, of which 6,100 square feet will be sanctuary area with expected seating for approximately 200. The balance of the area will be utilized for classrooms, parish hall, and offices. The existing AutoZone, the Tran Redemption Center, and the concrete mortar packaging uses are to remain in the building. The former Dollar General use required 63 parking spaces compared to the proposed church sanctuary that generates, by calculation, 62 spaces. Primary use of the church will be on Sunday and on Thursday night rather than normal weekday business hours. Adequate parking is provided via a shared parking agreement with the Plains Realty on the adjacent plaza parcel. Recommend approval subject to relevant agency comments and subject to the dumpster location with screening being shown on the plan. I believe a lot of that has been addressed on the plan. You have favorable from fire. It'll have to meet the fire code and the building code, so that'll be what that amounts to is to be determined as they proceed. Building department basically said the same thing. It's got to meet the building code. Water department has no conflict.
Okay, John?
All right, great. Just for the record, John Federico with Gurrier and Hellman. I know Dale had forwarded a copy over to Larry. Not sure if that made it out to the board. Apologies, I didn't make some smaller
have it
copies here.
in front of us.
But we did have a dumpster detail with the appropriate screening added to the plan, and we are proposing that location essentially at the edge of our gravel area and where our pavement area is going to be met, relatively close to the existing tree line that's there. That shouldn't be in any sort of conflict with the parking spaces that we had, and that dumpster would just be to service the church use that's there. We do have on the plan a couple other dumpster locations for the trans recycling, as well as the AutoZone dumpster. The dumpster that's being utilized for the concrete is part of the adjacent property, since they are sharing common ownership, common use out there. So we believe everything should be relatively addressed. And then we also did just throw in a note up at the top over here. There was this one section of parking, if I'm seeing that correctly, it's 8 stalls plus an extra 2 that were there. Striping in that area was a bit faded, so we are going to have those refreshed. Every place else on site was in good condition.
Yeah. That's where the dumpster is.
Any comments from the board?
Or that's where they're putting it anyways. It's not in the way of anything, really. I'm all set. I don't have anything. No, I'm good.
Pleasure of the board.
Make a motion, we approve the amended site plan?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the amended site plan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous of 5.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys have a good night.
Okay. Go on to our public hearing.
Do you want me to read the intro? This is Continued public hearing on the application of Route 85 Realty Corp. for special permit approval regarding the construction of a 191,000 square foot wholesale facility and associated off-street parking for a 116-acre undeveloped property located on the westerly side of East Main Street and the south and southwest of Wildwood Drive, known and numbered as 0 East Main Street, Assessors Map 30, Block 0, Lot 34. It's in the BP zone. This is a continued public hearing from the December meeting.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, we open the public hearing. We're going to hear from the applicant. We'll hear for comments from the board, and then we'll hear from the public. Again, when the people from the public get up to speak, give us your name, your address, and address everything through the chair, please. No debating. Gentlemen.
Good evening. For the record, Joseph Antonellis on behalf of the applicant. With me tonight is Therese Bayard, who is the applicant's representative, Mark Wallace, and John Kusich. If you will recall, at our last meeting, the board, we spent a significant amount of time discussing the impact of sound in the neighborhood and the construction and types of construction that would be used in the sound wall. The board asked us to provide some additional information regarding the sound study and the manner in which sound would be controlled by the wall. And to that end, I'd like to have Mark Wallace address the board with the updates that he's provided along the way. John Kusich is also here to discuss any civil issues, civil engineering issues regarding the board. I think we've worked through most of those. I think that Liz has a question lingering about the fire suppression system at the building, and I can address that as well as our architect who's been working on it. So with that said, if Mark could have the floor, I'd like him to go over the sound analysis that he had done and the little further description about how the wall works to offset the sound in the neighborhood.
So for the record, my name is Mark Wallace. I'm with Tech Environmental. I was here back in December 17th to provide an overview of the sound assessment we had done in our October 31st report that was sent to you. The board and the public had a number of questions and some additional requests to be included in that sound assessment. We prepared a revised report. I believe the board has a copy of that. That's dated January 15th, thank you, 2025. So as part of the revised report, there were a number of things that were discussed at that last meeting. The first was to include an evaluation of facility daytime operations. We did that. We looked at the ambient sound levels during the daytime. The quietest hour was during the 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a sound level of 36 decibels. If we recall, the Mass DEP noise policy allows a 10 decibel allowable increase over ambient or maximum allowable limit. So we did an evaluation to look at trucking activities during the daytime. Those sound levels projections and calculations demonstrated that the sound levels would be below 46 decibels, which is 10 decibels above 36, at the nearest residence on East Main Street, as well as Wildwood Drive and the other surrounding neighborhood locations. And I'll touch upon some figures that I have in the report, sort of demonstrating that evaluation. Excuse me. And in addition, there was discussion about, well, what is sound, what the sort of common outdoor sound levels are. Just to give some perspective, we added some language in the report that says that a quiet suburban nighttime area is 40 decibels approximately, and for a busy suburban area, it's approximately 50 decibels. Having this kind of conversation I'm having with you folks about 3 feet away or so is about 60 decibels. So it gives you some kind of perspective of some of the sound. As we had demonstrated in our last meeting, we had measured sound levels of 30 decibels was the lowest ambient sound level that we measured during the nighttime. And as I just mentioned a little while ago, 36 was the quietest time. during the daytime. So we're again sort of even below that quiet suburban nighttime condition even during the daytime. With that being said, the projected sound levels from the facility are actually going to be lower than that at those nearest residences due to propagation of sound, the shielding from the sound barrier wall, as well as from the building itself. And again, there's a couple of figures in our report that demonstrate that, and I'll touch upon that in a moment. There was a question regarding how does sound travel or are impacted by the sound wall. We included a figure 1 in the report, and I'll touch upon that a little bit. So sound barrier walls reduce sound by either absorbing, transmitting, or reflecting it back, forcing the sound to take essentially a longer path. The longer path is referred to the diffracted pathway, and the diffraction or bending of sound waves around the barrier can occur both at the top and on the sides of the barrier. You sort of think of it as like light or water waves that sort of can go around an object. The similar thing with sound as well. So the diffraction or bending of sound effectively reduces the intensity of the sound and lowers the sound levels in the community. So to have an effective sound barrier wall, it's got to be tall enough and long enough to do that. The rule of thumb is that you must break the line of sight between your receiver and the sound source to reduce that sound. And as I mentioned, figure 1 in our report demonstrates that. And I can answer questions afterwards regarding that figure. Another comment from the board was with regards to elevations between the site and the closest residence at Wildwood Drive. The proposed barrier wall will have a top elevation of 340 feet, which is approximately 15 feet above the proposed grade of about 325 feet. The sound barrier wall would effectively block the line of sight between the idling trucks and Wildwood Drive, which has an elevation of approximately 310 to 320 feet. As I discussed at our last meeting, when we did our evaluation, we not only looked at the first floor, but also the second story of all the homes that have a second story. Again, that's part of the Mass DEP noise policy evaluation. And again, we want to break that line of sight to reduce sound at that top elevation. We also looked at whether increasing the height of the barrier would generate any additional sound attenuation. And we found that it would only be an imperceptible change in sound, approximately a 1 decibel change if we were to increase that height. There's a figure 2, which illustrates sound propagation calculations. This was a comment from the board looking at saying, could you present some contours showing how the sound is propagated and actually attenuated by the barrier wall. So we have 2 figures, 2 sort of side-by-side figures. One is without the sound barrier wall and one with the sound barrier wall on the eastern edge of that trailer parking spaces. The figure shows that the diffraction of sound over the barrier wall would reduce the perceptible sound from the facility, particularly in the Wildwood Drive neighborhood. The figure shows that the 35 decibel and 40 decibel sound contours and how that sound barrier wall will reduce that sound at Wildwood Drive. So you can see in the figure that there's a definite reduction in sound with the wall there. Again, the green line represents 35 decibels, and the yellow line represents 40 decibels. So it's basically diffracting that sound either to the north and a little bit down to the east as well. Figure 2 also shows that the building itself acts as a barrier itself, so it again reduces the sound from East Main Street and from Zane Circle. Again, there were some concerns about sound in that general area. I'd like to point out that the sound measurements that we took in those locations were higher than the 30 decibels we measured during the late nighttime that we took at Wildwood Drive. That's due primarily to traffic on East Main Street and on Interstate 495. So again, that's sort of a summation of the changes to the report. It doesn't change any of the conclusions that the predicted sound levels would be in compliance with the Mass DEP noise policy, and in most hours would be either imperceptible or barely audible at that time. And so I'll take any questions from the board.
2 seats on. Any questions from the board?
Yeah. Go ahead. You want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
So, Mark, so this study that was done was on the existing noise. I mean, have you done anything on 40 tractor-trailers loading all day long? And
Yes, the propagation of sound, those contour lines that I'm showing in the figure 2 in the report.
Okay.
That's the sound from the facility itself. So that's the idling trucks, the trucks driving into the site, the HVAC equipment on top of the roof, all that equipment, all that energy of sound simultaneously occurring at the same time. So again, that's a sort of a worst-case assumption, from the standpoint of we're assuming all these things are happening simultaneously to give a maximum sound projection.
okay, so it's a theoretical. It's not.
It's an acoustic modeling analysis,
Okay.
and again, we did that with a three-dimensional model. We take into account terrain, atmospheric conditions, as well as the surrounding buildings to generate those contours that I'm showing in the figure.
Chris?
Thank you very much for the additional information. I think it was important. I appreciate you, going back and kind of answering these questions for us. I appreciate that. I think in perspective of with and without, it does show what the purpose of that sound barrier is and how it does bring in the kind of that sound level. So and it helps to attenuate that sound from the neighborhood. So no, I appreciate that, and we'll certainly take all this into consideration. So thank you.
I should mention, I'm sorry, there were some imagery and some information that Boulder put together with regards to the barrier wall itself. That wasn't part of my report. That was a separate submittal. Hopefully that gives, again, a cross-sectional view of the terrain in the area, the wall, and the nearest home on 9 Wildwood Drive.
Anything else from the board?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a little silly, but I live near Jean's Variety, and when they have their dumpster emptied in the early morning, that sudden noise awakens me. Are there any of those kinds of noises that would be emitted from this facility, like, banging of, truck doors or something like that? Because that's the kind of thing that awakens people in my experience.
So we did not assess that in this particular study, but there are some, measures, good noise best management practices, sort of what I identify as good neighbor policies that could be implemented at the site. I've talked with the client about those particular measures that I've seen at other warehouse projects. Again, you want to make sure that all doors are closed, from the loading dock operations, making sure there's no jake braking going on.
Right.
Those kinds of things, as well as trying to make sure that, when the trucks are backing up into the loading dock here, they're sort of rubberized,
And they don't have the backup.
bumpers kind of things and
Yeah.
that kind of thing going on, so.
Okay, so maybe if the board is in agreement with this concept of those sudden loud noises at night, maybe Mr. Antonellis or someone could draft language to that effect. Obviously, you're only hearing from one member. But.
In response to that, I think we had anticipated that the good neighbor policies would be adopted into the decision that have been set forth by Mark. And we could certainly accept a condition that there be no dumpster recovery other than between 9 to 5, where there's no need for that. Most of those companies don't work after that anyway. There's no need for that. So a stipulation regarding the restriction on when dumpsters could be emptied would be fine.
And similar, again, loud, sudden. Yeah.
Thank you. And also then back to what Mark mentioned, I forgot to state that Bowler did, Mr. Calagione asked a specific question at the last meeting regarding to get some specifications on the wall, and I think that John Kusich can address that for Mr. Calagione and the board. We did respond to that request.
Yeah, we just provided the detail. You wanted to know specifically what it could be. As I mentioned, there were multiple types of walls that would provide the density needed to mitigate down. So we did provide the detail for
Yeah, could you just go through that, because I didn't take my magnifying glass with me tonight. I can't read it.
essentially, it's an aluminum wall, really. It's, you know, the height doesn't change. It really showed the material of the wall. I think you wanted to make sure it wasn't something that was,
Is it a concrete type material? Is that,
this one's metal.
It's aluminum,
those are aluminum panels
aluminum panel.
with steel H?
I believe so, yes.
Are the panels, is it like insulation in between the, okay.
Yeah,
That makes
They're-
more sense.
Yeah, and they're normally sandwich, panels have usually about a 2 to 4 inch spacing of material in there to absorb the sound. A lot of times the panels also have perforated metal on the inside to absorb the sound. So there's different kinds of design. There's been a lot of improvements in the design of certain types of materials nowadays for getting quite a bit of sound reduction depending on the design of the wall.
Not this time, it's this one.
Yeah, that's just this though.
Yeah. It's some sort of hollow core panel in it. It's an engineered noise reduction wall. It's specifically for that purpose. Anything further to put right now, no?
No, I think for that, you just wanted to make sure it was in the plan set. That's why we added it.
The other issue that I think was lingering was regarding the fire suppression system at the building. We've had our architect review it, and I would just point to the board that the installation of automatic fire sprinkler system is controlled by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 148, Section 26G, and it specifically references that a building over 7,500 square feet must be equipped with a automatic sprinkler system and must be equipped in accordance with the Massachusetts Building Code. So in any and all of these circumstances, one looks first to the size of the building. Here, obviously, we're over 7,500 square feet. And then secondly, to the Massachusetts Building Code, which has different regulations within it relative to the installation of sprinklers based on the use category of the building. I can tell you from my experience with the statute that the use category of this building will fall within the uses that require sprinklers. But then when you get into it deeper, the manner in which the sprinklers are installed, how many are necessary, et cetera, will be related to the type of product that is stored within the building. So we have a little bit of a catch-22 because we don't know exactly how many sprinkler heads we will need because we don't yet have a tenant. We do know generally that we're going to need X amount of sprinkler heads for the size of the building, and we're going to need X amount of gallons per minute, and so on and so forth, but we don't know the final. I would state to the board that a condition in the decision that the building must be equipped with automatic sprinklers in accordance with the statute is certainly understandable and acceptable, but again, we don't know exactly how many sprinkler heads we're going to need until we get to that point. So I don't know that I can give to the board any further information that we've given relative to the predictions. We know from our examination of the water system in Milford that assume argumental that the building was built and never occupied, that there's sufficient water in the fire hydrants in the area to put that fire out. I think that's just a hypothetical. But again, as it relates to the specific user in the building, we know the use is wholesale with storage, so you can therefore presume that there'll be storage of something there. And then again, whatever is stored, the types of material, there are different requirements for different materials. We don't anticipate anything that would require anything extraordinary in that regard. But I don't think I can give you a complete answer as to exactly how many gallons we need per minute. And the other thing is, I want one more thing. To the extent that there was an insufficient flow, if we had a user that required more than what's there, then the alternative is to install tanks. And tanks can be installed either internally or externally. To the extent that a tank had to be installed externally, then we would certainly have to come back for a minor modification of the site plan to show you where the tank was going to be installed, how it was going to be installed, and what impact that tank might have, if any, on the calculations for stormwater. Again, we wouldn't think it would because it will most likely be underground. And again, from my personal experience, I'm going through a situation now in another town where exactly what I'm speaking of is going on. A tenant has been identified. We've been able to calculate the use. We know how many sprinklers we need, and we need to put a water tank in, and it's been ordered. So again, we can't occupy unless the sprinkler system works. So all of this falls on the applicant, owner of the building, to make sure it all flows, to use the term. I hope that's helpful.
On that, are you concerned more with the water main out on the street or the water, or the service coming from the street into the building?
I understand that the applicant is going to have to meet all of the regulations and will meet them. My reason behind having a concern with this is that I think there's better ways for the town to supply additional fire flow if that is needed. Upgrading the main in the street would give them more fire flow and make our water system better. So I'd like to see a win-win rather than just a win and we're stuck with.
Deal with what we have, yeah. Okay.
So, and I completely understand that they don't have a tenant, that they can't give us final answers. I'm not asking for final answers. I'm not asking for, I'm not asking for something to go into the permit and say, well, if it's more than this, you can't be there. I'm just looking for a guesstimate, I guess, that because the fire code calls for having, you have, the water system has to be able to provide the fire flow at the hydrant or the sprinkler system if required, whichever is greater. So I'm just looking for, pick a commodity. I don't care what commodity is. Pick a commodity and tell me approximately whether you're at 1,500 gallons and the 2,000 is the one that's controlling, or if you're at 3,500. I just want to have some idea of where it falls comparatively to the 2,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Joe, did you get that?
Yes, I think Tariq, is that still there?
Was that
The architect there?
No, I'm going through his email today.
Yeah.
One of the other situations is that depending on how things are stored, so if you have racking that's 35 feet or 10 feet, and if you have one material on one side of a building versus another, it's just the architects weren't able to like I have no problem calculating it and trying to provide
Where
it.
did they come up with the 6,000?
So that was a miscalculation. The 6,000 was if the building didn't have a fire suppression system, which isn't allowed. That's where the 6,000 was calculated.
So that's for the building of that size with nothing in it.
Correct.
Without a fire.
Correct.
Okay. So
Yeah. That was our
just-
fault.
If somebody had explained to me that that's where the 6,000 came
Yeah.
from, like I've been trying to get some information so I have some scope of where
that was our complete
And that's.
Regulation.
Yeah, I never thought that 6,000 was a realistic number anyway, so
Yeah,
it
no.
wasn't, it was just that, it seemed to me that that was including something inside the building, but I see now that it wasn't.
And that's the same way we generated the 2,000 gallons per minute at 20 PSI.
So I guess I understand that there's a lot of variables. And as an engineer, I've had to make assumptions that maybe I'm not even comfortable making some of the time. But I'm looking literally personally for a ballpark as to, is the sprinkler system typically over the fire hydrant requirement, or?
So that, I can kind of answer that, because I knew you were going to ask that.
That would be
and I
helpful.
actually did ask the architect that, like, can we just say what it would be? It's like, tell you what I can't say is because it depends on the commodity, the racking, there's so many different variables, you have to do an exact calculation, to which I said, for a traditional warehouse, from what you've seen, is the 2,000 at 20 PSI for 4 hours, does that cover it? He said, for most traditional warehouses, that would cover it. So that's what I got from him, because that's why I wasn't sure if it was, you had that, then you added it, but you take whichever one's higher.
Whichever is greater, right.
And then he specifically said for traditional like, wholesale warehouse facility, that is what you would do.
I mean, I guess where you're going, and to a certain extent, is we all know there's an existing parcels that are there. If they're that close, and I guess we can't tell the applicant what to do, but it would seem to me that the applicant may want to behoove himself to try to figure out what he may have to do in the future, because he's got very little water that he can do anything else going forward.
And upgrading the main, honestly, might be logistically the best option. It's just we're not there yet. So we're fine with the condition on or off-site improvements as required, or anything of that nature.
Yeah, there's just no way for us to require it after you've gotten your approval.
Right.
That's my problem. If you
wouldn't
want
wanna do
to
that.
put the tank on site because that works better for you, you can do that.
Are we talking about Zane to Holliston?
It would, I don't.
I don't know, it depends on where the water company ends up having.
I would say it would be from your T to,
Yeah, and I think what
To the
Joe was
intersection.
saying, though, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, I think what Joe was saying, if we needed to do a tank or something like that, we would have to come back as a minor modification to you.
Yeah.
So at that point, we would then have our calculation, we'd know there was an issue, we'd have to come back to you to say, hey, we actually need something more, we think we might need this, and then there could be a dialogue of, well, I'll tell you what, is it better to do X, Y, or Z instead of that? So, but we don't think we need that based on the conversation with the architect. Again, we don't know until we
No, I
know what comes in
completely
there.
understood.
But from hedging bets and going under probabilities, we think we're good with what we have. However, if a condition comes where that is not the case, and we have to go through full building permit review, so it's not like we can sneak it by, right? It's fully reviewed. Then if there's a condition that says if that's the case, we want to talk, you'd like us to talk to you about a minor modification, then I think the board would have the ability to have some conversations on that end as a condition.
So you're going to have this building built and want to occupy it, and you've got 2 or 3 other building pads in the business park to go. And if you max everything out with this building without improving the main, and now you've got these other buildings in the back that require even more, you're going to have to, what are you going to do to replace the main then? I mean, doesn't that kind of complicate?
Necessary.
Pardon?
I didn't mean to interrupt, I'm sorry, but the hypothetical is certainly poignant, and we're paying attention to it, and as the landowner and the person who wants to develop the property, they will have to respond appropriately at the time. But we don't know what the future holds for the rest of this property. We don't know what the development opportunities are. It's been slow to be developed in the first place. We've had this conversation. The number of uses for large pad sites is decreasing significantly. So to the extent that we're lucky to find additional pad sites, then we'll have to address that when we come back. And further on that, you don't know how much water is going to be left at the time and whether somebody else in Milford is taking it.
So it sounds like, too, the trigger is whether how big of a fire suppression system they're going to need. Now, if it triggers a larger one than what the water main can handle, then what?
They can't get a building permit.
So it goes to the building department. That's why.
They'd have
So
to
kind
come
of a
back.
trivial question,
They'd have
but
to come back.
but there is a
It's-
trigger.
At the end of the day, it's not our decision. It has nothing to do with us. It's the building department, unless they give them the calculation. Or, I mean, in order to get this to begin with, if they're going to actually build this before they have a tenant, then they're going to have to make assumptions, otherwise the building department's not going to give them a building permit. If the usage then ends up not being that usage, or they want to go to multiple racking systems within that property or whatever, they don't have a building, and can't be used for that use. They got to find another tenant. They can't put that tenant in.
Or they can make changes to the building,
Or-
the fires, that you
Yeah.
put up a firewall in the middle of a building, and then you can.
It's just more of there is a trigger. There is a stop point if we exceed that capacity. That's
Whoever-
kind of more of my fundamental question, just to make sure and to appease.
I'm more worried about the future in terms of if there's something that would make sense to do now, but that's their choice. But
again, there's a trigger.
I'd be less likely when they come in next time, if they're piecemealing this thing, to continue the piecemealing process. I'm going to want to see what's going on, because if there's a way that this can also help the town, if that's needed, then
Exactly.
that should be done. But I mean, it doesn't sound like right now we're in that situation.
And if it had to be done in the future, it's going to be done on the existing, on Route 16.
Exactly.
Not
Not their feet
Not in
coming
this
in.
development here, so we're not going to tear up something we just put in.
Correct.
We're going to take care of something.
Yeah.
What, could be a number of things. They could tie in another section from interconnect and anything. There's a number of ways to do it.
The solution is one thing, but as long as the trigger stop points, that's what I want to ensure of. That's
The
all.
biggest thing,
Mr. Wilson, from the aspect of the trigger point, the fire suppression systems are controlled by statute. The statute provides for the enforcement of that by the building inspector and the fire chief in the town. It is overseen by the Department of Public Safety, and there actually is a separate automatic sprinkler fire appeals board that sits in Hudson, Massachusetts. And I've been before that board on numerous occasions, and I can tell you from my experience that if you seek a waiver and/or an appeal, you really are not very welcomed at that board. Okay? So it is very difficult to move forward in the Commonwealth without properly sprinkling whatever the word would be, without installing the proper sprinklers in the building.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
Okay, we're going to hear from the public. Again, your name, your address, and again, speak through the board. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Carl Leaders, 4 Biennial Circle. I think, Mr. Chairman, we're walking past a few issues that I'd like to address. One is the warehouse, the other is traffic. The proposed building has been presented as a wholesale facility. The description of the building is 24/7, 41 bays, 191,000 square feet, 40 feet high, 2 football fields. The Institute of Transportation Engineers defines that building as a high-cube warehouse. Even the traffic study describes this building as a land use code 154 high-cube warehouse. And it's really not economic to build a building with these characteristics and use it as a wholesale facility. By contrast, the former Amazon facility at 8 Industrial Road is only 145,000 square feet. 40 feet high, 25 bays, it's classified as a warehouse. It's also in an industrial park, not in a residential area. Section 2.2.2 of the zoning bylaw states, that where an activity might be classified under more than one use, a more restrictive use shall govern. Because the tenant is not known, this would be Land Use Code 155, High Cube Warehouse. On the basis of this information, the planning board must reject this proposal. Should the planning board accept the incorrect characterization of this building as a wholesale facility, who is going to pay for and monitor the ongoing compliance with the conditions as set out by the town planner? There's no place for a High Cube Warehouse 24/7 in a residential neighborhood. Regarding traffic, the traffic study was conducted in November 2022. In this time frame, traffic was greatly reduced due to COVID. The study concludes that approximately 13,000 vehicles go through the Route 16 Beaver Street Fortune Boulevard intersection on a daily basis. The Milford 2024 Comprehensive Plan Traffic Study lists the volume at Route 16 and Beaver Street at 17,000 vehicles, and at Route 16 Fortune Boulevard at an additional 11,000 vehicles. The traffic study substantially understates the traffic at Route 16 Beaver Street and Fortune Boulevard intersections. The accident rate at this intersection is already 150% of the state average. Further, the intersection at Beaver Street and Route 109 was not even considered as a part of the traffic study. The Milford 2024 Comprehensive Plan lists traffic congestion as the most significant transportation issue in Milford. These intersections rank near the top of the most congested intersections in Milford. The 2022 study data says that approximately 154 axle or greater vehicles per day move through this intersection. It's likely greatly understated, as the traffic volume in the study is greatly understated versus the actual conditions. And the 2024 Milford plan was based on Mass DOT 2023 data, and we all know traffic is up substantially since then as more and more people have gone back to work. Further, the study uses Land Coast 154. The zoning bylaw requires that the most restrictive use be used as the basis for evaluating the project of this nature. This would require using Land Coast Code 155, which is High Cube Warehouse. The Institute of Transportation Engineers guideline says that a land use code High Cube Warehouse with these dimensions would generate one vehicle every 5 minutes, 24/7. This number could be higher based upon the actual use of the building, which is unknown at this time. There are safety issues at Beaver Street and Route 16, as many times trucks must use the oncoming traffic left-hand lane to make the turn. This does not even account for the slowdown and acceleration of vehicles that would be coming into and out of the proposed site. The traffic study used for this proposal does not form an appropriate basis for evaluating the traffic impact of this proposal. Section 1.10.1C of the Milford zoning bylaw states that the uses of the special permit will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. Given the already high accident rate at Route 16 Beaver Street Fortune Boulevard, combined with potential increase in traffic volume on top of an already congested traffic intersection, this proposal runs against the Milford zoning bylaw and must be rejected by the planning board. Mr. Chairman, I would like to submit this to be included in the minutes, if I may.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes.
Raymond Lowe, 7 Pine Needle Circle. I think Ms. White brought it up about the beeping, the backup beeping noise. I'm assuming if 24/7 use that, I don't know if the backup beepers are a regulation that the trucks can not disable, but, you know, if it's in the middle of the fall when it's nice out and there's no leaves on the trees, that beeping, I'm assuming the leaves make a difference in the sound propagation, because clearly where we live, 495 is much louder now than it is in the summer. Is that beeping going to be going on 24/7 when trucks are backing up into the loading bays?
Commercial vehicles don't have beepers.
Commercial vehicles don't. So a tractor trailer backing up to the dock to load or unload?
Strictly construction vehicles.
Okay.
That's not true.
But there will be construction.
Well, during the construction, it will.
No, I understand during the construction, it's a whole different, right? You know, we're going to have 9 months of whatever, and then my concern is 3-4 years from now that, you know, I know the construction is going to end at some point. It's the continuation forever and ever.
Yes, sir.
My name is Norman Poisson. I live at 11 Whispering Pine Drive. I'm here to discuss the East Main Street Health, Safety, General, and Welfare Impact. Section 110D of the Milford zoning bylaws state that the use for which a special permit is being sought will not cause substantial harm to the neighborhood or create a nuisance or hazard affecting the health, safety, or general welfare of the citizens. The noise study is inadequate because it only addresses trucks in idle. It does not address backup noise or acceleration of vehicles out of the facility 24/7. Further, it does not address the use of multiple yard dogs being used simultaneously to move trailers around the yard. The proposed sound barrier wall is 15 feet high. The sound will simply travel over the wall.
Things that move the trailers.
Additionally, the proposed wall does nothing to mitigate sound toward Whispering Pine, East Main Street, or Zane Ridge residents, particularly at night. Lastly, the sound study is based on residences being only 2 stories. Some of the residences are 3 stories. The Amazon warehouse at 8 Industrial Road received a number of noise and traffic complaints which have been brought before the planning board, and at that area, and that area is less residential than the proposed site. As we know, Amazon left that facility, but still parks a number of vehicles off Route 16 next to Route 495, which creates significant congestion. Another thing is no light impact study has been performed. The proposed facility will have light towers that impact residents at night. The headlights of vehicles exiting the facility after dark would shine directly on houses on the other side of Route 16, which would be a nuisance for residents. Simply put, dropping a 2 football field size 41 bay high cube warehouse in the middle of a residential area is in conflict with section 1.10D of the zoning bylaw. For this reason, the planning board must reject this proposal.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm Jim Flanagan, 8 Whispering Pine Drive. First, I'd like to thank the planning board and particularly the planning and engineering department for trying to protect the citizens of Milford, but I think you're not really doing a very good job of protecting our neighborhoods, and that's why we're here. I'll read this petition, which has been signed by about 70 of the East Main Residents Organization, so you can understand basically our position. And I'll leave these signatures with you, Mr. Chairman. We, the following undersigned associates of East Main Residents Organization and neighbors to the proposed Route 85 Realty Corp. development on East Main Street, Milford, respectfully request that our objections to granting of a special permit are considered. 1. The original denial filed on August 14, 2024 states that, quote, development will not create undue traffic congestion or impair pedestrian safety, end quote, with which one board member took exception. Numerous local residents have noted their disagreement with this conclusion. Their case is supported by decades of daily occupation and travel in the neighborhood, not 1 week of study. 2, the original denial filed on August 14, 2024 states that the proposed development will not cause substantial harm to the neighborhood nor create any nuisance or hazard affecting the health, safety, or general welfare of the current citizens of Milford, end quote, with which one board member took exception, and numerous neighbors have noted the disagreement, about 70 here. 3, the remanded proposal is not, quote, materially distinguishable from the original proposal and should not be allowed under current bylaws of the town. The only change is a fence to, according to the applicant, reduce sound levels on site towards some neighbors. Its effectiveness is questionable, and it provides no sound reduction from trucks on East Main Street at all. So I would present this, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And I won't get into defense of some of those because I have some other things. Oh, I'm sorry, there are a couple more. There are 70-plus people in the neighborhood that have already signed. I have a lot of information. I'm going to try to go real fast, so I don't use up the time, but this is important, and I'm not representing just myself. Traffic study problems. Do you want the individual copies, Mr. Chairman? So you can read along?
No, we'll listen to you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Number one, the town's, it's already been mentioned, the town's comprehensive plan input from residents listed traffic as a major concern. And this project only contributes to that, so it's in complete conflict with the comprehensive plan. Two, peer review by the town's contractor of the traffic study, and I've spoken with her, only reviewed the methodology and did not verify any data, didn't update for any counts. Three, Mass DOT traffic study projection practice is generic. It's not specific to this site. A 0.01 growth factor was used by agreement with, I'm not sure who, but someone in the town. However, local conditions probably vary significantly from a generic factor due to the specific changes. As an example, the Amazon parking lot is very specific to that area, it's a short distance away. The continuing increasing Amazon traffic heavily skews the traffic on East Main Street. A specific study showing recent history, current levels, and projections based upon local conditions should be required. Note, there's traffic using this growth rate of 1%. Traffic in Boston traffic is reported up 14% in 18 months from November of 22 to mid 24. Traffic is up much more than the projected area that's in this study. 4, it's not clear from the Traffic City how the synchro capacity analysis software included single unit trucks or tractor trailers. There's no information given about that. Typically, trucks have significantly greater impact on traffic flow. On the highway, engineers use 10 to 20% slowdown. That's a multi-lane highway, not like East Main Street. The real-world impact of tractor trailers attempting to turn in and exiting from the proposed development site are not mentioned in the study. The mix of SUT, that is the single-unit trucks and tractor-trailer trucks, and their impact on the traffic signal west of the proposed development is not discussed in the text of the traffic study. This analysis should be required. 5, the study is the same study presented before with a new cover page. It's so out of date, it still mentions the 555 project in Hollis. Should be updated to reflect current conditions. 6, environmental impacts of truck traffic are not addressed. Recent studies show, and if you want, I can provide copies of literature. Recent studies now show that a warehouse of 100,000 square feet or more can affect the health of those living 1/2 mile to 2 miles distant. That includes my house. In light of these data, emissions should be studied to protect the health of the neighboring residents. Thank you. Oh, wait, there's more. I'm sorry.
No, that's great.
The sound report. Although limited time for review, because as was mentioned, the sound report was dated January 15th, 6 days ago. We find that many of the details are not provided therein, although some were provided by Mark this evening, which we appreciate. However, the report doesn't talk about the specific sources of sound. That's what some of the people were questioning. Does it include this? Does it include that? What does it include? What's not include? Only truck engine idling was presumed to be a source. That was corrected tonight. It's likely that more than one truck will be on site at a time, but we don't know. We don't know what the decibel levels were. We don't have the data. Are diesel truck refrigeration units included or not? Unknown. What decibel level was used for the site for truck or trucks? Unknown in the report. Trucks generate more noise when beginning to move forward than at idle. Was this considered? We don't know. Truck backup alarms, and as mentioned, not all tractor trailers have them, but single unit trucks do, pickup trucks, rack body trucks. I don't know what kind of trucks are there because we don't know. They do have them. They range between 97 and 112 decibels, legally limited to a minimum of 95 decibels. What about two trucks backing in? What are the other sources of sound that add sound intensity? We understand there's some consideration of that, but we don't know exactly what it is, like the rooftop HVAC. Traffic walls reduce sound intensity by 5 to 10 decibels, according to the Massachusetts DOT. So what factor is this wall supposed to be reducing it by? We don't know. What factor was used in the applicant's model for that? Moving trucks are louder than idling trucks. What impact of sound can be attributed to the additional tracks on East Main Street and on the site access and driveway where there's no wall? The proposed sound fence provides no mitigation for that item. The proposed sound fence provides little or no sound reduction for homes on East Main Street. For these reasons, we view the sound study and the proposed sound fence inadequate. Thorough analysis and remediation is required to protect the neighborhood. For these reasons, the application is materially indistinguishable from the prior application and should not be allowed. If you look at all the sheets and submissions, there's only one or two, and if you look at the sound report, you can barely tell the difference between the two before and after. I have one more thing. This is short. It was disclosed in the joint motion to remand the case that, quote, the parties have had several discussions, end quote. The parties refers to representatives of the town of Milford and the Route 85 Realty. We request the content of these discussions and the attendees be publicly disclosed. We request copies of any minutes and notes be made available to the public. Because in the view of transparency, we'd like to know who is negotiating and what they say. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, Jeff Howard, 23 Zane Circle. Just a question. You know, I respect the assumptions of the estimating that was done, the calculations that were done about, you know, projected noise levels, you know, consideration of these other comments. What remediation is available should their projections be woefully underestimated? Once the permit is established based upon their estimates, their calculations, does the town have any recourse if they can't really control the sound levels that their facilities provide?
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Nancy Briseno. I live at 24 Zane, and I appreciate all my neighbors doing all that great legwork. I can't cite any codes or anything like that. I can just tell you from experience that there are times getting out of Zane, the traffic is so intense it can take me 5 minutes. We're a community of infants to several over 5 condos. And I have a tremendous fear that it's an accident waiting to happen when we increase the traffic flow. I've lived in Milford since 2019. At the intersection that you cited, I have seen so many accidents. I have been in the turning lane on Route 85 and almost hit so many times by an 18-wheeler trying to negotiate that turn. And fortunately, like when that did happen, there would be nobody behind me and I could back up. But it's just from a safety perspective, from a common person who doesn't know the codes, I do see this as being a real hazard, and I would hate to see an accident happen. I also think that from a sound perspective, 18-wheelers are loud. When they shift gears, some of that sudden noise that you were talking about, that jolt can actually be very loud. I could foresee the roads getting a little torn up, having that volume of those heavy trucks on the roads. They hit, a pothole, that's very loud. If that happens in the middle of the night, it's going to wake you up. It's really jarring. They honk their horns. I mean, there's a reason that you have a horn, but they honk their horns, things like that. So I just wanted to share that as well. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yes, sir.
Frank Holland, I'm 47 Zane, and I don't have all those numbers either, but same thing she just explained. Trying to get out of Zane Circle and taking a left is really hard because someone mentioned line of sight. Line of sight coming from the east, as soon as you start to go, the car comes. And the other thing I want to say is that the end of that street is also a Milford bus stop for the kids getting down into Zane Circle. They stop on East Main Street, and then they let them out. So again, it's another, problem with traffic. And I've seen, again, really close calls with vehicles not stopping now. I can imagine when you get a whole bunch of tractor trailers on it. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jean Kramer. I live at 39 Zane Circle. According to the zoning bylaws of Milford, the purpose and intent of these laws is to conserve the value of land and buildings. Now, I understand the houses around there, especially closer to where this is being built. There is no way that their land is going to be worth what it is without that building built. I know this from personal experience because where I lived, they built across the street from me, built a large building. The value of our property plummeted. So now you're talking about our area. Somebody comes looking to sell the house. Somebody comes in, they look at the house, they love it. They try to get it out of our area. It takes them 5 minutes to get out of the area. You're not going to buy the house. It's a losing point for everyone. And I've been through that. I sold my house because of it before. I don't want to have to do it again. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Janet Carboni from 461 East Main Street, and I want to thank all the people who came up with so many of these factors, all the codes, the numbers. I really appreciate that. One of the things that really upsets me about not only the traffic and the sound is the fact that it's going to possibly be a 24/7 project. And I don't think anybody would want to live 24/7 with noise like that in their neighborhood. And I would appreciate you taking that into consideration. If this project goes through, that it not be 24/7. Thank you.
How you doing? My name is Paul Hines. I'm 459 East Main. Where is the road going to be coming out? I never saw the plans. That's why I'm asking.
Almost directly across.
Because I'm on the corner of Whispering Pine and East Main.
You know where the
there's a phone.
the soccer field and volleyball court is?
Yeah.
Right there.
Across the street.
Yeah.
The other part of, so I grew up in the Plains. I'm 61 years old. I've been living down in East Main now for 9 years, almost 9 years. Never once have I opened my front windows. Now, when I was up on Fairview Road, we open the windows all the time. But the traffic there is nonstop. It never sleeps. And when I say it never sleeps, it never sleeps. It could be 1 o'clock in the morning, it's just like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There's always something going by, whether it's trucks, cars, it doesn't matter. I don't back out of my driveway. When I have company come over, I come and pull over in the grass and go out straight. Now we're going to add to that. There's no sidewalks down there. I haven't seen a trick-or-treater in 9 years. There's no sidewalks. So for this building to come in, you know, we were hell-bent on the casino. And when we wanted to not have the casino, there was protected wildlife in there. Where'd they go? Did that protected wildlife leave? So I guess my thought is this. If these guys don't even know who they're going to put in that building, why put that building up? I'm lost with that one. So, again, I don't have the numbers like these guys, thank God for them. I'm just a truck driver. That when I back my truck up, it beeps like this, okay? So that beeping is a real thing. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, it's a piercing noise, okay? So I guess my thought is simple. Think about what you're doing, that's all. We live there. I can't get over this Zane Circle. You know how far away that is gonna be? And it's impacting them. I wish the people of Holliston knew what was going on. They'd be here in droves as well. Because it's going to impact them. All of Route 16, it's a nightmare. It truly is a nightmare. So, and again, I have one more. I've had more deer get hit in front of my house, and it's tractor trailers, right? Thank God it's not little kids. But you don't get little kids out there. No little kid crosses to go play with their friends on Whispering Pine from Wildwood. They won't do it. There's no way across it. All right.
16.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I just let Joe Greska, 4 Dogwood Lane. I would just like to elaborate on that fine woman's comment about the value of our homes. I bought mine in 2000, 25 years old now. I hate to see the value of my property go down or the resale being harder to resale. It's a 5-bedroom house. It's going to be hard to sell that to a family with 3 or 4 kids in an area like that. I think that neighborhood is made for family, and everyone has a right to get a little extra money for their home and have it easier to sell. I think just to even sell the house after this project is built might be tough. Never mind what you're going to get for it. So I think everyone should kind of look into that a little bit.
All right.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Yes. Oh, sorry.
My name is Wilson Valdez. I live at 9 Wildwood Drive. And thank you to the neighbors for the presentation. But I don't know the numbers. I don't know the technical numbers what they're talking about. But it's simple like that. The board, I think, has to be, like a protect to people, and a lot of neighbor, the whole neighbor. And imagine this, everybody talking about the noise, everybody talking about the traffic, and you have to do the consideration of that, because right now it's hard to, everybody explain how the traffic is and how worse will be with this project. And somebody mentioned the casino, and before the board denied that project, and the people both in Milford denied that. So I think, our neighbor, we have to now call it, maybe we get an attorney or get the technician, because this in charge, they propose it, but we don't know, the neighbor outside. We have to fight to see if they telling the truth, how it is going to affect, because somebody present different numbers. So the town has to verify, what is the exactly effect, or how it's going to affect the neighborhood, this project. And lastly, at least should be this, come to the vote, like before, like the casino did, and then let us know, vote for that project. Thank you.
Anyone else? Martha, you had...
Thank you. Do I understand correctly this land used to be zoned residential?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, quite some time ago. It was
2009.
Okay, so around 2009, it was changed to the BP district? Okay, that's just was, I'm sorry? It was rezoned in 2009 to the current zoning? Okay, thank you, that's all I was wanting to know right now. Thank you.
BP now, but it was originally.
It was.
It
yeah.
was residential.
It was residential at one point in time.
Across the street was,
Okay.
Yeah, it's been multiple, yeah.
But in 2009,
Yeah, the corridor
it became
was.
the
Last
district
one
it
was,
currently
yeah, it was
is.
BP, around that time.
Just making clear,
Yeah, I
it
think
used to be
originally it was,
residential.
I think it was originally IC,
Yeah.
industrial, and then it got changed to residential,
And
and then business
And then,
park.
okay.
no, across the street was in commercial.
That was definitely, wasn't
Zane
it?
Ridge, Zane Circle, Whispering Pine, all that, that was commercial before. We made it industrial. And we made it residential. And then we went on the other side, yes.
Yeah, but this was, the corridor was originally planned to be industrial.
Yes.
And then got changed.
But it's been
BP for
pushing 20
over a
years.
decade.
Yeah.
Quick question on clarity and refresh my memory. The first proposal was it only for the special permit, or was it for special permit and site plan? Because right now we're looking site plan, excuse
Both
me.
times it was both.
It was both,
Yes.
okay. All right, so if it were to go through, they don't come back to us for any other conditions unless something changes on the site plan, correct?
For the site.
For the site
Site
plan.
plan, right.
The special permit, when they identify who is
Who
going
it
to be the
is.
tenant,
Yes.
the tenant, they'll have to come back
That's, okay.
for the special permit.
All right, I wanted to be clear on that, because I thought there was an additional time with it come back, so,
Yeah, that's
because I
why
believe
they-
I stated on that.
That's why the language says it's issued to the applicant, it doesn't
Yes.
run with the land.
Yeah, because I recall stating that in that past meetings on that first proposal, that based on that tenant, it would be great to be able to review operational hours, because if it is a company that all their vehicles have backup alarms, then of course we're going to put restriction on their hours of operation. So just to be mindful of the people in the area, that if it's by coming back to us, it gives us that ability to understand who the tenant is and potentially put restrictions on them for hours of operation based on if their vehicles, we understand that their vehicles would have backup alarms.
Yeah, because
Because
I would,
backup
I
alarms
would,
allowed.
I would envision as a warehousing, which, there's a bunch of stuff about high cube warehouses and all that.
Wholesale.
They can't, it's a wholesale use. It has to be a wholesale use, so he can do whatever he wants.
Right.
But it has to be a wholesale use.
Right.
That's
Has to
what's
be.
in the bylaw, that's what's permitted. So if there's something else in there, then the town has the right to close it down. It's a wholesaling use. That being said, most of the wholesaling usage, you're going to have the deliveries that we would expect late at night are large tractor trailers that are backing in and unloading, not a bunch of trucks that are leaving that have backup things or anything like that. So yeah, at that point in time when we know that, you could say that isn't the type of uses that we want from 12 to 6, 9 to whatever the discussion is. But you
yeah,
could do that at that point.
Okay. No, thank you for that clarity.
The traffic analysis was done both ways. So, right? Oh, sorry. The traffic analysis was done as the use that you're saying for the warehouse, and it was done as wholesale. And in neither case did it trigger any requirements for upgrade on the roadways. Just want to let you know that was done.
Again, we're not, speaking, we're not having a debating society here. That's,
Sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm good. For the moment. You thought you had something a few minutes ago.
no.
Okay.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I'm just wondering if there were some outstanding questions that you may be able to answer or answer going forward at the next meeting, only because, I mean, I understand where some people were saying. I also believe that a lot of those things were taken into account, and we should at least close the loop on whatever those questions are, such that, we can run those things through. So for the sake of trying to make sure everything is answered, I think it would be good to go back through and just, whether that's a sheet of paper or whether you have them all down and you can answer them all now, or however you want to do that. But there were points at least that should be answered.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
Did you want them to respond to you?
No, go ahead. I mean, you can.
Go ahead.
Well, let me just add, while you guys are deciding who's going to talk next, the next meeting available, if you're considering continuing the hearing, would be February 18th, because we're locked in on the February 4th meeting with the ad hoc subcommittee for the comp plan. The consultants will be here on the 4th. So if everybody is heading toward a continuance, it would be the February 18th meeting would be the first available meeting.
I'm wondering what is allowed in this district by right. That is, if any uses that some of the neighbors might find similarly objectionable would be allowed by right, i.e. they would not even come through this board. There would not even be a public hearing for you to voice your concerns. And I'm just not sure what, if anything, I don't have a zoning bylaw with me.
Anything would have to come to us. It's a new site plan at a minimum.
It's a site plan, that's true, but not a public hearing. And no notification to abutters through site plan.
Still a public hearing.
Still a public hearing for site plan.
No.
Site plans are not public
Site plans aren't public hearings.
No, a site plan, but
But if it's permitted as of...
For the permit, yeah.
If it's as of right, which is what Martha was questioning, it doesn't require anything other than a site plan. So I happen to have my bylaw, if you want me to read through. So just starting... Obviously, residential uses aren't allowed, but getting into recreational uses, golf courses are allowed, business incubators, non-retail business incubator uses, business or professional offices, computer tech research and development, conference or convention centers, electronic data storage centers. You got a couple special permits. Let's see, internet service providers as of right, life science research and development as of right, professional buildings as of right, scientific research and development as of right, almost no commercial uses. And then in industrial, the only as of right industrial use would be radio transmission. In terms of other principal uses, a helistop would be allowed. A large-scale solar energy system is allowed as of right, just site plan review. Let's see.
Did you say helistop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would be noisy.
So, water?
Yeah, typically you don't just have those stand alone. You would have them with some other development, like a hospital or something, or research and development, which is what this is zoned for.
Waters.
So it could be a very...
So there are some very large office-type facilities that could be built there, but not the warehousing wholesale, other than through a public hearing process like this. Okay.
Yeah, this is only a one-shot deal with this.
Yeah.
With this once.
If
this is approved, there can't be anything similar to this.
On that part, within that district.
Within the.
With that
This is the
portion
only
of the
business,
district.
yeah, within the. So all the other things that Larry just read could go in the rest of what's there, but not one of these.
Right.
And this ties up.
Where does it say that?
This ties up the use in the entire contiguous BP district, not just the overall large parcel, but all the surrounding parcels as well. You can only do one of these if you're using up the full 10 acres, which they're doing, then that's it. Nobody else in that contiguous business park district could propose one.
I was just trying to point out the things that could go there, which, while you certainly could come and voice your concerns, is not the same setting as you have here.
So I think there's a lot of questions and about traffic and sound. So I just wanted to take the time, Joe, maybe you can discuss some possible conditions that could make the board
Mr.
possible.
Chairman, we've obviously paid very close attention to all of the questions that have been asked by the board members, and I think that we've responded to them with sufficient information to demonstrate that we can comply with the standards that are set forth both by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the town of Milford. In regard to the distinct aspects of a special permit, I think Mr. Calagione was beginning to touch on this. The applicant recognizes that a special permit granted for the wholesaling facility with storage will require the applicant to return to the board to demonstrate compliance with the traffic study, which there have been comments made about, and that traffic study will have to be based on the trip generation that we assigned to a wholesaling with storage facility. This is not a cube warehouse. I will make the distinction again, as I did earlier in the process, that the significant distinction between a warehouse and a wholesaling facility is that a wholesaling facility does not and cannot deal directly with consumers. It can only deal with commercial entities. A warehouse, your high cube warehouses, your sorting facilities are not limited in where those trucks go to. So the number of truck traffic generation is significantly higher in those types of facilities. We will have to be very selective in the tenant, and again, we've agreed and suggested to the board that when we identify the tenant, we will come back to the board to show the board that that tenant's operation of the site complies with and comports to the terms and conditions that your board might suggest. The most significant of which from the hearing, throughout the hearing process, is then compliance with the traffic generation that we've demonstrated, and secondly, compliance with the Massachusetts Sound Ordinance, again, which we have submitted to you, can be met or exceeded. The standards can be met or exceeded by the installation of the wall. To the extent that that wall needs to be tweaked, or there needs to be additional consideration to make certain that we meet the Massachusetts code, which is the code that we have to comply with, then the board in the special permit will have the authority to impose additional conditions on the applicant. From the beginning, we have said that the applicant understands that those are necessary conditions because we have not been able to identify a tenant for you. When we come back, and hopefully we will be coming back, we will have an identified tenant, and the board can again deliberate as to whether or not that tenant's operation will comply with the four corners of the zoning board's, of your planning board's decision, of the zoning decision. And again, I heard the comments that have been made by all of the members. I've certainly heard the comments by the residents. I'm not going to tell you that I think I can answer their questions. They're local, it's their neighborhood, but your board is a planning board. You are responsible and have been for the overall master plan in the town of Milford, that yes, there's questions about reducing traffic, but the master plan is also designed to increase growth in the community, to keep the tax base up, to have sufficient income to support the community, and part of that is the proper development of land in different sections of town that sometimes, because it's the unique aspects of New England, are somewhat incompatible. But that's how we've all been brought up in the Milford area, and that's what we've all come to see. There have been changes. I don't mean to make this light of this, but I remember the nights at the Milford Planning Board when the Zane Ridge project was being proposed, and residents complained about the traffic that Zane Ridge would bring to Route 16. I remember all of it because I've spent my entire life, except for the last few years, in the Milford community, and I've seen it grow, and I've seen the traffic increase, and I've seen the land in Milford developed, and I was there in 1950, and I don't remember back to 1950, but I remember from 55 on pretty vividly. Yes, there's a lot of traffic in Milford, and there probably is going to be a lot of traffic in Milford for a long time to come. But again, this is an allowed use, albeit by special permit. We believe it is a fairly benign use because, again, it's not going to be a high cube warehouse. It will be a specialized user for the building, and hopefully with approval, we can go out and actively find that tenant. But again, if the board wants us to come back and answer any further questions, we're more than happy to. But again, I think that the four corners of a tightly written special permit decision will provide this board with the assurances that this applicant's project will comply to all of the local bylaws and the state. Thank you.
With apologies to the applicant and the residents, I don't know if how the rest of the board members feel, but I don't feel ready to vote tonight. A lot of information was presented specifically that makes reference to the terms of the bylaws that I'd like to review and make my own interpretation of those provisions. I feel like a lot of the information presented tonight warrants some further consideration, further review. So personally, I don't feel ready to vote.
Then again, if I may interrupt, Mr. Chairman, based on the comments from Member White, I would respectfully request that the meeting be continued to the next available date.
And I apologize to my former board members and the residents because I know you'll all want to come back.
Well, in doing that, I'd like to, obviously there was the stuff that was handed in. If the applicant and his engineers can go through that and just put comments next to those, I think that would help at least closing off the...
Yes, absolutely.
Email? Yes. Good point. And Mr. Duncan, Larry, if you wouldn't mind making copies of those, of what was submitted and email them out to the members, if that's in agreement with the members?
Scan them to the applicant, too.
So we can look at them before the next meeting.
So it'd be the February, the February 18th?
February 18th.
Motion.
Move to continue the public hearing to February 18th, 2025. Did I do that right so far? And the time? Do you need it? You don't need a time.
7:02.
7:02 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we continue the meeting until February
18th.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous of 5.
Thank you to the board. Thank you to everybody for your patience. Appreciate it.
Whispering Pines.
Evening.